Thank you very much. So just to answer a quick question, although we'll get to apologies in a bit, Saba is fine, but she has work commitment in Leicester tomorrow and the trains are on strike. So she couldn't go, I'm afraid. So that's why she's not here this evening. But good evening and welcome to everybody else for the People Committee. I'm Diane White and I'm chairing the meeting this evening. In the event of an emergency, leave by the main entrance, congregate at the front of the building and remain in your seat if you need any assistance. The meeting is usually being filmed for live broadcast on the Council's website, but unfortunately we're having some technical problems tonight, so it is being filmed and will be released as something to watch later, unfortunately. So huge apologies for that, but haven't managed to overcome the technical gremlins tonight. But it will be there, but not till later. Thank you. Members are reminded to turn microphones on, please, and spoken into directly and clearly. And please ensure that your mobile phones are switched off. I will now ask the members of the committee present to introduce themselves. I'll start over here. Sorry.
Hello, Rowena Bass, Coombe Hill Ward.
Hello, Yvonne Tracy, Green Lane and St James Ward.
Councillor Noel Hedgermichael from Canberry Gardens Ward.
Roger Hayes from Kingston Town Ward.
Anne Owen from Kingston Gate Ward.
Good evening, Anita Sharper from Berrylands Ward.
Susan Skipworth, Norberton Ward.
Andrew Sillett from Coombe Vale.
John Sweeney from Kingston Town Ward.
Jogannathan from St Mark's and Seething Wells Ward. Sorry,
Good evening, Sue Ann Sorry from Hook and Chesington Ward.
Lovely, thank you very much, everybody. Note we don't have our advisory members tonight, but we do also have some wonderful officers here who will introduce themselves as we speak to them later on. Item 1, public questions. We haven't received any this evening. And item 2, we have no petitions either. So do we have any apologies and attendance of substitute members? Sam, please.
Yes, Chair. Apologies have been received from Councillors Hamed, Reeve and Grocott, and Councillor Hayes and Councillor Owen are attending as substitutes.
Lovely, thank you very much. Declarations of interest. Do any members have any declarations? No? Lovely, thank you very much. Minutes. Are members happy to approve the minutes of the 17th of September as correct? Lovely, thank you. I'll sign those in a moment. On to item 6, recommissioning children's services at Appendix A. Our recommendation resolved to approve the extension of Achieving for Children's contract for 5 further years. And many of you were able to see the briefing slides which Elizabeth and Rachel very, very kindly put together and answer any questions that you may have had already. But I'll just ask us, I think Elizabeth might speak to this, or Sam, sorry, did you wish to say a few words? But thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Evening, everyone. I'm Sam Morrison. I'm the Exec Director for Adult Social Care and Health. And we are the leads for commissioning the Achieving for Children contract. Just seeking permission today from the People Committee to approve the extension of our current contract with Achieving for Children for the delivery of our children's services. I think it's just a couple of points to note that we jointly commission Achieving for Children for those services with Richmond. This paper has also gone through the Richmond Committee at a similar time to this. And I think for the purposes of today, just as the Chair's outlined, we've looked to provide assurance around all of the work that's gone into place in terms of understanding the performance of Achieving for Children and bringing that here for transparency today, but really looking to seek your approval on moving forward so that we can continue that relationship and continue to deliver those good services for the children of Kingston.
Thank you very much, Sam. I will move the recommendation. do I have a seconder? Sorry. Councillor Hadji Michael, and then those who wish to speak. So, just a moment, sorry. Thank you. Would anybody else, anyone going to speak on this? Thank you very much. We'll start with Roger and then come to Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. With which it stops. I was going to ask if we knew what that strange whirring noise was, so I was finding it rather off-putting, but it's stopped now, so that's fine.
Thank you. That was the heating, apparently, but...
I've never heard it make that noise before. But anyway, I was finding it rather off-putting and difficult to hear, even with the microphones, so I just wanted to see what the noise was. But whatever it was, it's gone away, so I shall stop worrying about it.
Thank you very much, and that's a good note for us all to speak very clearly and maybe a bit more slowly. I know I speak too quickly, so thank you. We'll go to Andrew and then to Sue. Thank you.
I just wanted to give a little shout out for the AFC Centre at Vicarage Road. They do such an excellent job. There's 2.5 staff there, and they've been there for 20 odd years. They know all the children, they know their mothers. They put on such a good service. This summer, as they do an open day. They had about, must be 1,000 people down there. They got Declan Rice down there to open the football pitch. It's busy, busy, busy. We've got the cricket nets opened up again. I know that's not strictly AFC, but I really like what they're doing down there. Very impressed.
Thank you very much, Andrew. It was a fabulous day at the open day, wasn't it? It was really good fun. And also that's going to be one of the homes of the family hub is coming. So, well, hopefully with a little bit of growth in the budget. So it'll be even more amazing. So thank you very much. It's good to hear. Sue and then Anita.
Hi, everybody. As a disability advocate, I've been looking at the equality impact needs assessment, and I see it supports the recommended approach in the paper, and it highlights the potential negative impact on children and young people with special education needs of changing these existing arrangements. But I'm delighted to see the positive impact that Achieving for Children has had on children and young people. So it's more of a comment. But I see there's mention of that AFC produces a yearly quality report on the impact of their services, which is brilliant, and also attend the ESSG. I'm not quite sure what that is, if you could just explain that.
That's actually an old...
Oh, okay.
That's an old acronym that I have.
Sorry, Sue, could you turn off your microphone? Sorry, just because we can't quite hear Elizabeth. Thank you. When speaking, could everybody please make sure they speak right into the microphone?
Apologies, we're just locating that within the report.
That's okay, yeah. It's fine to tell me later, that's fine.
At the moment, they're looking for the acronym. Could you put the microphone on, please? Sorry.
Sorry, I'm new at this. So that's the Education Children's Services Committee, which was in 2019, that's referenced.
Thank you very much. Sorry, could you turn it off, please? Thank you. Thank you. Sue, is that the end of your questions? Thank you. Anita?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to first say that I'm really pleased to see about the recommendations based on the factors that you highlight in the report about delivery model working well, etc., and well embedded. So that's really good to know. I think the context of my question relates to that process of the proposed contract extension and that build up to where you mentioned the report about it started 24 months ago, and it allows for that to accommodate any changes or commissioning approach specifications. So I guess my question is about how you look at resource implications going forward. So do you envisage that it's sort of business as usual going forward? Do you see this as an opportunity to implement different approaches and models? 'Cause I know you sort of highlighted that in the report, but I was interested to know whether that was a way of addressing some of the current forecast that you mentioned in terms of resource implications, and whether you think that you'll build that into any future modelling that you're going to do. Is that, it's probably a question and a comment. I may have answered my own question, but is that, without sounding obvious, that's the reason why we are extending? I just wanted to get more detail about that. Thank you.
So we're really fortunate here in Kingston that Achieving for Children is exceptional value for money, for services and for our outcomes for children and young people. But because it is an alternative delivery model, we do have to have commissioning and contract processes in place. So but we're very keen that we operate as it was an as if it was a department of the council, because it's funded obviously by core budget. So we have, it goes through normal SLT processes, but also alongside that we have contract and commissioning meetings that we have on a quarterly and quarterly, 6 monthly and annual basis. So that's the operational commissioning group, and we do those jointly with Richmond and with Kingston. So we continue to look at the KPIs, we look at value for money, and we think about the growth bid that Councillor White's already mentioned tonight. So we do have extra checks and balances in place to make sure that it is efficient and it gives you the right value for money for the community of Kingston. And importantly, because we're able to say we've got outstanding children's services, we've also got the backup of Ofsted, CQC, etc., to be able to show that we've got the scrutiny behind that. We just need to make sure that the governance is always in place and robust, and we continue to review that on a quarterly, 6 monthly and annual basis, which is also reflected within the contract that we'll rewrite.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Sorry, can you turn it off? It's really hard to remember to do that. Thank you very much. And that's just reminded me actually what something that you said just there. It does actually say in the report, it gives us a list of our schools, 12 that were outstanding, 35 that were good, and 3 that required improvement, and that was in 2023. Excuse me. And you will all have seen in the next report that we have no schools that require improvement. All our schools are good and outstanding. So the 3 that required improvement both moved up to good. In fact, one moved up to outstanding, went from RI to outstanding last year, which is an incredible achievement as well. Thank you. Susan.
Sorry, just a question about the participation in extracurricular and out-of-school activities. One thing I know from the residents on the Cambridge Road estate, which is in my ward, is that we have lots of families who really struggle to access those simply because they don't have the means to get their children to and from activities. So they've got children that would like to be doing things, but often there's one parent at home, maybe with a baby, doesn't have the network required. We've got a social value programme that goes with the regeneration of the estate, and there is money that sits there to kind of support some of these things. And I wanted to ask how much you're able to maybe collaborate with the regeneration team and look specifically at the needs of that population, and how to maybe use some of the funding and the opportunities we've got to help improve that kind of access and inclusion.
Thank you very much, Susan, for your question. I wonder if Elizabeth and Rachel have been looking at the recommissioning side. So we might bring in Charis, who is directly, Director of Education with Achieving for Children, to bring in that side. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Charis Penfold, Director for Education Services, so I sort of look after everything to do with schools, early years across the borough. I know that school colleagues, primary and secondary, would be really interested in being part of that. and I think they are very engaged in the regeneration of that area. And certainly their challenges would echo that in terms of seeing the value of children and young people accessing after-school activity, and would also be able to make sure they signposted and they supported the right families to be part of that. So, and you also talked about the hope and the aspiration we have that we extend a family hub to that area, which would also support the extracurricular, the enrichment of families to access things locally, which is really important. It makes it as easy to access as possible. So in answer, we absolutely would want both our kind of social care, but also colleagues from our schools to feel that they could be a really good part of that conversation. So if there's any need to find the right people to be part of that, I'm happy to facilitate the right names for that group to make sure that we join it up properly.
Thank you very much. And I know in the new community centre, which name I've forgotten now, on the Cambridge Road estate, that is going to function partially as a family hub. It won't be a discrete building, but the services are going to be in there as well. So hopefully that will contribute too. Thank you. Noel.
Thank you very much, Chair. Not too sure who I'm asking the question to, but importantly, I'd like to just get some more information, even if it's not tonight, maybe subsequently, about our interface and relationship with independent schools and schools that may be in the borough or just on the edge of the borough that draw a significant number of students from our population at RBK. And secondly, I'd like to get some sense of how we're responding to and possibly tailoring some of our strategies and activities with respect to the incredibly fast-growing Hong Kong Chinese community. It is alleged that North Kingston is the fastest growing Hong Kong Chinese community in the United Kingdom. I'm quite happy to take that and run with it because I think there's a lot of anecdotal statistics, and even if that's not the case, it's also significant that it's something which the community is very mindful of, and I know that there are high expectations but also great dislocation for families who have come from circumstances where there may be less income or wealth deprivation, but significant dislocation because of the transfer into the United Kingdom. So if I could just put that on the notice, on the radar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Noel. And I think, again, that might not be a question for Elizabeth and Rachel, who have been dealing with almost the finances and the business side, but definitely something we can take away. Moving into the sort of the next item and the annual report, that does talk about our youth service doing discrete Hong Kong Chinese activities, and there is a huge amount that does go on for different communities, but also connecting communities as well, particularly in our public health area. They work extremely hard. There is a Ukrainian school specifically that is run by our children's services with government grant as well. But I do take your point, and what we do with the independent schools. Might have to talk to you more outside here and find out the questions and then come back, unless anybody does have anything else to add. But I think we might be coming back with that, if that's all right. Thank you. Any other comments, Anne?
I'm not sure whether this is the right place to ask it, but it's a kind of another, quite a small group, and probably not suffering from mental health problems at the moment, but it's the number of children unsuitably housed in hotels because they've been evicted by private landlords. And I think there probably is, a noticeable group of those who probably are candidates for mental health problems if they spend kind of months and months and months and months unsuitably housed. Is there any sort of outreach towards them? And this may not be the right place to ask the question, Diane.
Thank you very much. It's obviously the right place, as in it's the People Committee. I just think those of us who are here tonight are maybe not the right sort of specialists. Yes, you are right. There are children in our hotels, and it is a huge worry. In one sense, one thing that we always have to remember is that as children's services, can't just go in unless there is a need. It's almost an assumption that parenting is going on, and correct me, Charis, if I'm getting this all wrong, that parenting is going along until there is sort of concern raised, which the schools may well do. But it is definitely something that is everyone is aware of, and we have a meeting once a month with adults and housing and children's services, so the 3 directors and the 3 portfolio holders, because it's such an issue, such a concern, such a worry that our families, our children are in hotels. And sometimes that is balanced up with a hotel in our borough with probably bed and breakfast, but miles away, and then the issues of coming to school and how difficult that can be as well. So sometimes it is a real balance, but that's something else I'll come back to you on as well, if that's okay, and I promise I will. Thank you. Unless, again, anyone else has anything to add on that. No. Thank you very much. Any other questions to raise? Sorry, I'm going away with a list at the moment and not really answering any, but anything else anyone would like to say? No. So should we go to a vote? Would the recommendation to approve the extension of the Achieving for Children's contract for a further 5 years, are we unanimous on that? Yes? Lovely. Thank you very much, and thank you to officers, but we're keeping you for another few minutes because I think, Elizabeth, are you leaving us now? Thank you so much for all your hard work. It's been lovely to be working with you again after you were here for the original contract. Thank you very much. Thank you. So we'll move on to item 7, Achieving for Children Annual Report. And we have Rachel possibly to add a little bit to that. Do you have anything you would like to add at this point? Thank you.
Pardon me. Thank you, Chair. Rachel Howard, Interim Chief Operating and Finance Officer at Achieving for Children. So this report sets out 3 looking back reports for Achieving for Children's performance over the 23-24 financial year. I appreciate there's quite a lot of paperwork within that. The reports themselves, the appendices, cover all of the AFC's operational areas, so across Kingston, Richmond and Windsor and Maidenhead, and we've tried to pull out some of the key points pertinent to Kingston in the covering report. So the 3 reports you've got is our impact report, so that's looking back at kind of key priorities, key achievements, all the things that we're really proud of that we've achieved in children's services over that year. We've then got the equalities report that was referenced in the previous items. This is our equalities report for the previous year and the work we've been doing around equalities, diversity and inclusion, both across the children, young people and families we work with, as well as our workforce within AFC as well. And then the final report is the most technical one in terms of being the company's annual reports and accounts. So this comes to you not for approval, but to have sight of as owners of Achieving for Children. And this is our kind of formal documentation that we have to submit to Companies House, both the financial and performance elements within that. But yeah, happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Rachel. And just, I should have said at the beginning, Rachel, whom you will all recognise from the council, has been seconded to Achieving for Children to cover Lucy Corpus's maternity leave. And they were about to start a 4-week handover period when Lucy's baby arrived rather earlier than expected. So all is well with her lovely daughter. But for Rachel, she really has just landed in this and has been absolutely incredible. So thank you so much, Rachel, for taking this and being absolutely amazing with it. So I will move the recommendation, which is rather long, but it's actually just to receive the reports, and any comments will pass on to the Lead Commissioner for Children's Services, who is Sam Raphael at the end. So do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Hadji Michael. Any comments? Anyone wish to speak on this? We'll start with Sue and then Anita. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure whether there's anyone here for this one, but I'll ask anyway. I was really pleased to read about the futures groups. I'm looking at B25 Annex A. It's because I've been involved with a couple of pupils over the last few months that have not wanted to go to school. And so I'm really pleased to see that these groups have been happening. And I just wanted to hear more about it, really, because I managed to attend the school with some pupils, and we had the welfare officer and the teachers there. And it was lovely and everything was going well, but I often wonder what happened afterwards. So I'm really pleased to read this. So can anybody comment on that at all?
Thank you. I think that's possibly very much Charis's area. Thank you.
Right.
First of all, thank you very much for recognising that, because that was a group that we established, and we actually wrote the programme with our clinical psychologist in response to the need that you have identified, because in the last 4 or 5 years, the group of young people who are anxious and find going to school difficult has grown and grown, and there are a number of children with anxiety finding it really difficult to go to school. So it's a group that we need to look at resources, and we need to look at what we've done previously and change it and respond to what's happening. So it was, as it said, it was a programme for the young people in one group and their parents in another. So it was a really interesting look at the dynamic needed to effect change. So it's not just about a young person going to school, it's about the family having the resilience and the confidence to encourage them to. So it was very carefully evaluated, because it was the first one and the only one that we'd funded to do, to look at the impact. So there's an impact at the beginning and the end for the young people and their families. I think from what I remember, about half of the young people have made gradual return to school, and that's been quite significant. Their progress through the course was more significant than some of the anxiety and resilience of their families, which is also interesting. The change for them was more significant. And at the end, I suppose they're signposted back to some of the other services that there are. It was a pilot that we tried to secure funding with the ICB to run in to help us out, because it was very much about mental health. And it's evaluated, and I suppose we're hoping that we receive funding to do it again. Oh. But you're right, it's a very powerful tool, and you do need to look at the dynamic between the family and the young person.
Thank you.
Thank you for noticing that.
Thank you very much, Sue. Sorry, I could just switch it. Thank you. And last week I went to, or the week before half term, I went to the bridge and also to the one at Kingston. Step by step. They were absolutely amazing, and they are alternative provisions for those with social and emotional mental health needs for the younger children. And they were joyous and absolutely amazing, the work that's been doing. And the step-by-step one also had a parents' room going on as well, which was incredibly good. So there's some really positive work going on. Thank you. Anita.
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick query, really, question query. What caught my eye was, and this may not appear in an annual report and accounts, so if you can clarify that. But what interested me was something I picked up actually talking about where we've got a strategic report as part of the annual report. And it talks about key risks. And what interested me was how we adopt, what approach do we adopt when we look at key risks, and in terms of an oversight of performance and progress against, the strategic objectives, which I guess what this report is about, including the annual report and accounts. So my question is, do we go into any further detail, like level of controlled or uncontrolled risk, when we talk about risks? And the reason why I asked that is that what caught my eye was actually in the previous item where we talked about a modelling and whether something is a risk, we've identified whether it meets the council's political priorities. So I'm just interested on that alone. How does the governance allow us to look at key risk, and how do we look at risk, and how do we break it down? Thank you, Chair.
So there's a couple of things around that. So as a company, the company board look at the Achieving for Children risk register on a regular basis. And certainly one of the things I've picked up in my first few weeks with AFC is to really make sure we've got a focused look at that, and to make sure that that the board are able to see the priorities. And I know that from my time in Kingston, we've done a kind of a bit more of a fundamental review of the risk register, and to take a similar approach within AFC to make sure we're kind of picking up everything within that. But equally, we feed into our 3 councils, and so in Kingston as well, in terms of our overall strategic risks and how they impact the council in the same as any other department. So it's kind of looked at from a number of different angles in terms of our operational risks, our reputational risks, our financial risks, and the scrutiny through both the board within the company, but also through this committee, through audit committee here, the same as every other council department, to make sure that we've really kind of understood what those risks are and that they're being managed and mitigated appropriately.
Would you say that it's probably unusual to have that level of risk analysis in this format of an annual report, because there's probably in a time and a place where you're implementing those kind of risk assessments, and we see them when they come to people committee in the different reports. But for the purposes of this is just more of an overview, I guess, from the chair of AFC, I presume. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, that's right. This is an overview, and it's important to kind of make sure that the other elements of the report are kind of seen within the context of the risks that are being operated.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else have any comments or any questions, anything they would like to say? No? Shall we go to the vote then? Can we take this as unanimous? Are we just noting it? Oh, sorry. Hang on. Which page am I on? We are, yes, sorry, thank you. We are receiving it, and any comments are being passed on. We've received it. Thank you. We've all agreed we've received it. Thank you very much. On to item 8, Send Futures Plan at Appendix C, which is a regular item that comes before us. And Charis, is there anything you would like to add to this?
Thank you very much. So this is a regular item. I think I've been here once previously, and you might remember Ashley Whittaker, who usually used to come. So there's 2 sort of parts of this. The first thing is the implementation of what we call the Send Futures Plan, which is our strategic document that outlines how we are working to improve and transform some of the provision, resources and offer we have for children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities. So it's a strategic plan that we engage with parents, carers, all parts of the SEND system to complete. So it's about the progress for that, but also our performance against something called the safety valve, which is some additional funding we were able to receive through the dedicated schools grant to help with the significant overspend in the budget we have called the high needs budget, which supports children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities, which has, as you will know, been a challenge for a number of years in terms of funding not meeting the need that we have for resources and provision. So kind of, as always, we try within the report to outline some of the things that are going well and that we've been working on through the Send Futures Plan. So there are some examples there, but also in B, some of the challenges that we have, which will mirror some of the challenges that you'll be aware of in terms of an increase in children and young people who have additional needs, special education needs, disabilities, a challenge in finding the amount of specialist provision and an increase year on year in some of the cost of those placements as well, which is a significant challenge for us. And alongside that, the number of children and young people whose needs need to be assessed is increasing year on year. These are challenges that are not just typical to Kingston, but they are quite significant nationally. So under the safety valve agreement, we report to the Department for Education across the year, and there's a link into the most recent performance, and then they review the report and they tell us if we're meeting it, and we will receive the additional funding. I think it's important to note that the safety valve itself finishes at the end of March 2025, and as yet we have no indication from the Department for Education about what will happen next. So we met with them in August and we asked them that specific question, and we raised the risk for the council of not knowing and the ongoing overspend, but at the moment there is not any further information to us or any of the other 38 authorities with that provision. And then the rest of the report, which I'm sure you've read, is about progress, the work we do to try and engage all parts of the local system through stakeholders, because it's very much a SEND is about so many different parts locally trying to work together, and the resource and the legal bits. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Charis. And just to say that we know in the budget last week, they mentioned £1 billion going into this area. But at this moment, we don't know what's going to happen to that. And they're very likely to use the formula, which leaves us always underrepresented anyway. And we shall hear. I'll move the recommendation, which is definitely just to note this time. And then I have Rowena, Noel, Yvonne, Anita. Thank you very much. I'll go to Rowena and then to Noel.
Thank you. Well, you partially answered the question I was going to ask, because I was going to ask about what's happened, because obviously we're near the end of the safety valve agreement, which in a sense has really covered the overspend, and the structural overspend hasn't really come down. So it is a problem if funding doesn't carry on, though I know that there were talks about, you know, putting SEND funding on a different footing anyway, rather than just essentially a sticking plaster of an extra bit. But so is it just, so my two questions are, one is, are there any further meetings planned, perhaps with the CEO of the council and the leader with the DFE? And my second question is about the statutory override, because at the moment we're not having to put the DSG overspend or the SEND overspend against, we don't have to set it off against the accounts, which puts us in a slightly safer position. But if that deficit was to grow, we could potentially be in a net asset situation, well, which wouldn't be good. So, please.
Thank you. So in response to the first one, there is a great deal of lobbying going on, both through, I know, Sarah Ireland, Chief Exec with the Council, but also our Director of Children's Services, because there are 38 local areas now with a safety valve waiting for that decision. And the £1 billion funding is not a solution to the challenges within the SIND system and structure. It will probably do more of the same that we've had. So I agree with that, and we haven't had anything beyond the meeting that we had in August to that. And in that meeting, the Section 151 Council officer attended and was very clear in the challenge for the council, both for Kingston Council, but also for all the councils in terms of the statutory override, and the lack of information and the lack of certainty and the potential risk of a huge number of councils being in a very, very difficult financial position. But unless my colleague knows anything else, I have heard nothing.
No, so there's been no further information in terms of what happens to the statutory override beyond March 2026. And there is an urgent need for them to look at it, because Section 151 officers are required to look beyond, you know, into the future, 12, 18 months into the future, and making those considerations. And so by setting budgets next year, there will be some authorities that are looking at much more challenging situations that will be having to take that view to look beyond when the statutory override currently ends. So whilst there's a lot of lobbying going on, there's not much in response to that yet.
And as a follow-up, so obviously some of the special educational provision is provided through the private sector. So I wondered what the impact was of the VAT on that. Presumably the council gets that back, do they? Is there an impact?
So the VAT on independent and private schools is clear that children who have an education healthcare plan which has that independent school named within it, so paid for by the local authority, are exempt from that. But the concern is that there are some parents who choose or whose children accessed the independent sector, smaller schools, smaller class size, smaller environment, and that could impact some of those children without an EHC plan who are in the independent sector. I will also add that one of the requests that we've had in our meetings with the Department for Education is for them to work more closely with the independent sector to look at some of the inflationary requests that we've had from that sector for this group of young people and the impact that's had on our funding too.
Thank you. Noel?
Thank you very much, Chair. It's possibly a bit of a shopping list of questions, so I'll go very slowly. I'll take the Chair's wise counsel and speak into the microphone. With respect to the safety valve, is there a document or will a document be created for members of this committee or, as an alternate, all 48 councillors with respect to what are the potential or assessed impacts on a rolling 90-day period if we get to the cliff edge, and my hearing says it was March 2026, but please tell me if I'm incorrect, because that is only 2 months before the end of all of our terms before another electoral cycle. So that is more of a coming to the end of 4 years of administration. That's the first question. Secondly, I'd like to have maybe something either documented, reported or feedback as to what levels of representations have been made to the DFE, not breaching any confidentialities, but just to give us an idea of the levels of seniority of the people involved, especially on the other side, the DFE side. Thirdly, in any briefing or report back to this committee, it was a revelation to me, but interesting, that there are 38, I'm assuming, local government authorities or 38 areas that are in somewhat of the same pickle or challenge. I'd really like a list of those so that we have a bit of an idea as to the demographics. And finally, wishing to ask all the questions in one go, is how many households within Kingston are impacted by the safety valve? Much appreciated.
Thank you. I will let you take a start at that. I wasn't quite clear on your last question because we've got, 1,850 children and young people with education, health and care plans. Now, some of them will be siblings, so that doesn't necessarily translate straight to households. And just one other point, I think, there's 28 of the 32 London boroughs who responded, so all 28 of the who responded said by March 26 if the statutory override, so that is in the very non-technical term, the way I look at it, is you just put it over on another page and forget it's there. If that comes back, they will all have difficulties, so it is a lot, but I'll let Rachel or Charis answer the technical side.
So I'll take the first one and then Charis will come in. I think in terms of that, I don't think the cliff edge happens when that statutory override ends because of that forward look that authorities have to take. It's not just go, oh, we've got to the end of March, it's gone. It's actually we have to be looking beyond that all the time. Hence why that lobbying in the run up to March 26 is going to be really important, and kind of linked to your other questions about the number of authorities involved. The fact that so many authorities have safety valve agreements now or are in a position where they're starting to struggle and starting to build up deficits and heading towards needing some kind of additional support kind of increases the need for that lobbying, and because just the volume of authorities that would fall over when that statutory override ends kind of creates that impetus. We're obviously in that first wave of safety valve authorities, so we're reaching the end of our agreement before a lot of others, and within proximity to the end of that statutory override as well. But it's kind of a rolling programme of trying to continue that lobbying through a number of different channels before we get to, hopefully long before we get to March 26.
Thank you very much. Was that all of your questions there?
Thank you, Chair. I'm very content with the answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yvonne.
Thank you, Chair. I was just quite sad to read that the spring school has been delayed again, and now it says that it won't even be ready for the 2025 deadline in September. I just wondered, do we know when it's likely to be ready? Why, or do we know why it is going to be such a long delay? Because my main worry is that it says at the end of that part 1B that it will, because it hasn't got the room to take further intakes, that now people will have to go further afield. And I know from personal experience that some of the conditions that some of these children have, to go on a bus journey or a coach journey for any length of time is really stressful for them. So this is particularly worrying for me, that they might end up with very long journeys, even half hour to some children is almost unbearable with certain conditions. So do we have any update on what's happening there? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that is a really significant challenge for us. You probably know the context that the initial contractor went into administration, so the project just stopped. And there have been some challenges with recommissioning the new one and the condition of some of the original work. So that's in a kind of consultation or discussion with the Department for Education, which is something that we continue to speak to them about, and we have escalated through to the Regional Schools Commissioner, because the risk of, you're right, that school not being in its permanent, on its permanent site impacts on the number of children in its temporary site, particularly younger children, because the space at Norbiton is fairly limited for outdoor play. It's easier for secondary age children, but it impacts more on the younger children. So at the moment, we're being told that January 2026 is a possible, but obviously that's in the middle of an academic year. So we'd have to make sure that the spring school and its head and leadership team felt that they could manage a mid-year transition for those children during the school term time. So that's the current date, but we have had several dates deferred over the last few years. We're doing as much as we can locally to mitigate that in terms of talking to some schools that might be able to do something on a temporary basis through spring school to look at space that they might be able to use, so that those children could be on spring roll but in a different local site, because there is some capacity on some of our school sites as a result of some schools having fewer children. So we're doing all we can to keep those children as local as we possibly can, but it's a temporary solution, and as soon as we possibly can, we hope that we would be able to have that new building and move to it.
Thank you very much. And just to be clear, the buildings, it's built by the Department for Education through them. So it's not through us. So we have very little control. It's just as Charis says, all we can do is lobby and try and persuade them to find a contractor as soon as they possibly can. So thank you. Anita, please.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it was just interested in the idea that, you know, obviously there are the, which we've talked about the uncertainties about funding for, you know, what will look like in the future. So my question is, obviously there's an intention to, you know, work holistically and deliver support in a coordinated way, partnership working across the agencies. So my question is, when the report talks about ICB commissioning, and it gives an example of CAMs across all providers, can you see that there's any further work that we can do in terms of commissioning pieces of work that obviously will help in terms of being more preventative and obviously children and young people's situations escalating in a less severe way, or because obviously the EHCP features very highly in the SEND futures as some of the as a challenge area. So my question is, this report talks about new service model to transform place-based strategic leadership, and my question is, what do you think that will look like? And do you think we should be looking more at how the ICB is commissioned external reviews like CAMS? Is that really going to help in the link up with what we're trying to achieve with SEND Futures? Because it's in the report, so I was just interested to know how that could actually, where that beneficial impact is going to be. Is there one? And secondly, can we do more of that kind of work? Clearly it's sort of mentioned in the report. So that's kind of my couple of questions in one. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Can you tell me your question again, please? Sorry, I didn't quite get it in that.
So I'm using the example in the report about the ICB's commissioned an external review of CAMS. As an example, my question is, what are we doing in Kingston that builds on that? Because it's clearly in the report about health implications. It's in that report about trying to intervene earlier, trying to do clinical pathways. So we work with providers in a more efficient way, system partners and providers in an efficient way. So what is about that particular bit of the report that gives us a view about what a new service model is going to look like? Because paragraph 23, it talks about that example of what ICB are doing, commissioning work. But in terms of what we're doing and our Kingston Richmond Place team, we're launching a children and young people's transformation programme. So my question is, what does that new service model look like? Because it's actually in here. It's mentioned in that paragraph. And it says it's going to transform the strategic leadership and ownership and accountability. But I wonder what that would actually mean in the context of this report about the SEND futures. What is it about that is going to have an impact on how we deal with our SEND Futures programme and the challenges that we face? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll make a start, and I hope that I'll answer your question. I don't, Councillor White, I know, attends the Place Committee. Is that right? So may be able to add any context from that. But we work, the SEND Futures is a joint transformation programme which includes colleagues across the ICB and work really, really hard to include them. So they're part of our panel making. We have a designated clinical officer. We work as closely as we can with them, because you're right that the change we want to influence absolutely needs the right health colleagues to be part of that conversation and to bring their resources as well. And the ICB has undertaken quite a significant restructure and reorganisation over the last few months that is just, I would say, beginning to settle, and some of those commissioning activities are looking at potentially a South West London wide group. In terms of the mental health review that was commissioned by the ICB, the recommendations are two really. The first one is to look at the service model, which is what we're working on at the moment with them, and that looks at our Tier 2 service and South West London's Tier 3, and we're looking at what that one provider model might look like. And then there's also the kind of the embedding of the Thrive, which is a sort of tierless, seamless offer. So in time, you would hope that that would impact on the continuum of support that young people and children would be able to receive. One of the Send Futures work streams is all about early intervention. And it would be great if, as a result of some of this transformation, we were able to invest. We talked about young people with anxiety and school-based avoidance, if we could do more earlier to support that before it becomes entrenched. But I think at the moment it's quite a process-led activity to take the recommendations forward, and then we look at embedding in the model, and we would certainly want to be contributors to what we want the model to be and how we could refocus some of that resource into doing more earlier. But as we know, the statutory need is very high, and often that's difficult to provide the statutory need when you also want to do some intervention activity.
Thank you very much, Charis. And just to add a little bit to that, I, in my working life, I sit on the place-based committee, or I did do until recently. And I know Sam Morrison sits on that as well. Sometimes I wonder if children really get a full hearing at that committee, but the sort of the interest is there, the work is there to be collaborative and try and move forward in every area. Coming to the next committee will be a paper on the CAMS review. That's already been to Richmond, actually, and they were quite excited by it there. It didn't make it to ours because the Kingston Place-Based Committee didn't get to it in time, so it's actually going to come to the next one, and that is looking at a one-provider model and potentially releasing funding for us within our children's services to be able to do more of the earlier intervention help, which I think is something that's not preempting the paper or the recommendations, but I think that's really exciting, and I'm really looking forward to that paper coming next time. So, did you have anything? Yes.
You just say, yeah, and it makes sense when you say it like that, because this is only just part of it, isn't it, of a much bigger picture of prevention and early intervention, but it's about how we collaborate and work with other agencies and providers. And so I guess I was interested in that idea of, like Councillor White was saying, about what's emerging, that will change the way we work, and maybe that's still emerging. We're still trying to work out how we do things in the future. But sometimes when you read, when I read this paper, it's easy to be fixed on this is a deficit, this is an overspend. But actually, I'm hopeful that there's so much more to be said and done that will help with when we look at efficiencies of how we work, because that is about resource implications, isn't it, at the end of the day, and how much money it costs us to implement and do things right. So that's where I was coming at, just as a clarification, really. Thank you, Chair.
Very much. I think Sam would like to come in. Thanks.
Yeah, no, thank you, Chair. I could just add a couple of points onto that, really. I think in terms of the place partnership, I think, yes, sometimes the children's element doesn't always get all of the coverage, and I think what Ian and I have been talking about is how do we come together to really sort of showcase more of that all-age life course approach, because it is about really understanding the impact that we have seen coming through into adult social care, and sometimes our conversation gets a bit led, particularly when with health colleagues we tend to focus about older adults and some of that hospital pressure. Some of the things that have been we've been working towards over sort of recent meetings is that in supporting the place partnership, there is now a Kingston and Richmond mental health committee specifically that has been set up, and that wasn't in place in the shape and form that it is now, and I think that's a really positive development, and both myself and Ian are part of that committee, and that will then help to sort of shape the agenda and that conversation back up into the place partnership as well, and that's where the CAMS review work will be reviewed as well. And I think the other piece that's an opportunity through the place partnership is the work of the integrated neighbourhood teams. That's a really big focus for the NHS, but there are some real strong opportunities with the alignment of the work through those teams and the work we do within the council around sort of community hubs and family hubs as well, and that's really sort of then bolstering that preventative approach in the community. So I do think, like you say, Councillor Sharper, there are opportunities that are coming our way, and even though it feels like it's a really tough space to be in, I think we've taken some steps over recent months to try and sort of put some governance in place, but also to start some of those conversations, and hopefully following sort of the 10-year plan coming out in the next few months, we might get some more opportunities to sort of build on some of that joint work.
Lovely, thank you very much. Thank you. Susan.
Sorry, I wanted to ask a question about co-production. I'm reading the equality impact assessment, but I'm guessing that it's referenced in all the other documents as well. I do get very confused about the different ones. I just wanted to ask about I don't know, how you determine whether co-production is working effectively, and because it's so complicated, and you can have, you know, sometimes you might have families where you feel the parents maybe don't quite get the best interests of their child, or there's communication issues, or I can talk from personal experience because I'm a parent with special needs children, that one of the barriers, I think, for me has been just not understanding the process. It took me years to realise the difference between a parents' evening and an annual review, and you just feel like you're just going from one form to the next. And sometimes you end up being very dependent on the school to explain all of this to you, and you almost start to feel like the school is helping you deal with AFC, which seems a bit, it's like somehow there's a sense that the system is really complicated, you can't really understand where you are in the process, the overarching shape of it all, and this is, I think, to do with the legislation. I'm not saying that this is an AFC specific issue, but helping parents get to the point where they feel like they understand what they're being asked, they understand the implications, they understand the choices in front of them, they understand the process, goes above and beyond just asking the questions, if that makes sense. Sorry, I'm being very long-winded here, but I would just like to hear what your views are around helping people navigate the complexity of it and how that fits into co-production.
It's really complicated, and we sort of eat, sleep and breathe it, so I share all the points that you've made. But the essence of co-production is absolutely threaded through the 2014 Children and Families Act. So we have a number of ways of engaging with parents, carers, and actually children and young people are an important part of that co-production as well. So we've worked hard with our Kingston Parent Carer Forum to agree what we believe co-production is, true spirit of co-production. And I think that it's important to have those conversations, because engagement isn't producing something that you've agreed and done, all of it isn't. So we've had quite robust conversations with our Parent Carer Forum to agree together which aspects of SEND transformation we would properly co-produce, and which we would engage and talk and ask for the views of parents and carers. So try to be a bit, because it's quite hard to co-produce every single thing that you do, because some is just, that's the process and that's how it is. So that's sort of the agreed local definition we have. But we do work closely with parents through a number of different forums, and listening to them and trying to hear some of the areas that are particularly challenging is really, really important. And Chike Nanule, who is our Associate Director for SEND, is a particular champion, and he co-chairs the Parent Consortium, which is a group of parents who can meet once a month and have a conversation with us about what it is. The Parent Carer Forum is a more official group. We also have parent engagement officers, and I think, you know, we try very hard to encourage schools to do as much as they can to be open and kind of, you know, visible, and coffee mornings, chats, help Senkos with that. And then there's the local offer as well, which is a kind of website, all-encompassing, enormous space where everything is, that we've also tried really hard to listen to parents' voice about how easy different bits of it are to navigate as well. But you've raised points, and I think we do all we possibly can to listen and engage, and where appropriate to really work in a co-productive way, if we possibly can, in one or two key projects. There are one or two at the moment, and we've mapped out engagement activities across the year with our Parent Carer Forum. Councillor White does a lot of activity with our Parent Carer Forum too.
Thank you very much. I have been, it is super, and I think it depends on where you are in your journey, doesn't it? Because it can be incredibly hard, especially at the early time, when you're just so overwhelmed with it that it takes a little, speaking from lived experience as well, that it takes a little while before you can see out, by which time all that help and support would have been really useful in the early days. I think the engagement with the Parent Care Forum or Consortium, and they sit on various subgroups. They are really involved these days. There's also the parent champions now, who are a wonderful group of peer support from within. So if you're aware that they're there, then they're there to say, yeah, I've been through that, or I haven't, but I know how to find out how to do that. But it's incredibly hard to know what's there if you don't know what you're looking for at the same time.
No, absolutely. And I think the other thing that's struck me is that obviously you know, as a parent you can get advice from other parents, and that's, you know, the perfect solution in many ways, but you're also often looking to the school and the SENCO to tell you what's going on. And if the SENCO can't tell you effectively what's going on, or isn't being consulted and involved, that can also be a barrier. So I think it's really important that the SENCOs are able to explain processes, and I don't know if co-production happens with them as well. I mean, you've talked about keeping them involved, but it's got to be a two-way conversation, hasn't it?
We have a lot of support groups and induction and regular SENCO, both bite-sized drop-ins, forums, and new to SENCO is a really big focus group for us as well. But they need to know, as you know, as you've outlined, the right information for the right family at that point in time. And depending on how big your school is and how experienced you are, SENCOs can know a lot and have 10 years of experience, or can be new into roles. So that is also an area we need to help them to have the information that they can, or to know where to go for it.
Thank you very much. Is that final comments, everybody? So shall we note this unanimously? Yeah, lovely. Thank you very much, and thank you, Charis, and thank you, Rachel, very much. I think we're moving on to adults now. So item 8, adult social care updates, please. And I wondered if Sam had anything to add.
Thank you, Chair. So just bringing to People Committee's attention a paper to outline progress against a number of key priorities across adult social care within the context of national priorities, but also to give you an update on our preparation for impending CQC inspection as well. And I think this is the first time we've brought a paper like this to People Committee, so really helpful to have feedback on whether this is a helpful paper and that you'd like it going forward as well.
Thank you very much. I have to say, I did think, I haven't seen one of those before, so I'm glad it wasn't just that I'd missed it before. So I'll move the recommendation, which is to note. Seconder, thank you, Councillor Hadji-Michael. Who would like to speak, please? Would anyone like to give any feedback on this report, either on the report in general or anything within? Thank you.
Just to say, I thought it was a really well written, really good piece of work, Sam. And it was just to, with my terrible handwriting, I just wanted to get a sense that where do you think, in terms of resourcing in the future, with, you know, to implement the vision and so on, where do you think, what are the areas do you think that would need sort of more time and resources? Because it's sometimes quite difficult to get a sense, is it operationally, is it the delivery of service? Where do you think those key challenges will be in the system? Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Shaper. So, I think for us there are a number of areas that we've focused resources on currently to sort of really kickstart the transformation across adult social care. And a lot of that has been built on the work that we did around a financial fit for purposeness review. We felt on the back of that we needed to really focus around understanding the demands on adult social care and the cost pressures that will come in. And on the back of that, we focused resources around supporting the experience of people accessing adult social care, particularly through the front door. So we've had quite a lot of support through our transformation programme around digital investment across adult social care, particularly looking at how we improve our website offer, how we embed Connected Kingston and our social prescribing approach to actually support people within the community so they're not actually coming into adult social care as their first port of call. So I think that's been a really sort of significant area of focus for us, and we are also working with the operational teams to look at other ways for bringing in automation for the way that they work as well. I think the other area that we've sort of had some additional support and resourcing around is adopting generative AI, so using a company called Beam to support us and put AI into the hands of our social workers. So they are using a tool that is enabling them to sort of transcribe their conversations with individuals, and that is absolutely helping them to have a much more sort of person-centred approach, and the feedback from the social workers has been fantastic about that tool. It's also saving them time, so that is really starting, it's early days, but starting to have that impact in terms of freeing up time that can then be used on practice, but also getting back to doing the day-to-day job back at the desk as well. So I think for us that's been our sort of first area of focus around resourcing. I think moving forwards, I think the work that we've been doing has also outlined that we want to bring back more focus around resourcing back into operational social work. We've got some really good practice, but what we do want to do is really build that strengths-based model across all of our operational teams and have real consistency in how people experience our services. And we know that we get some good feedback about how we perform, but we know that we want to do better, and that's absolutely in line with our vision of putting residents at the centre of what we do and having that challenge back to ourselves. So I think for us, whilst we've had that digital focus, we've been really good at adopting new ways of working, and certainly I think lots of other London boroughs are following our lead around use of AI. We'll be wanting to sort of look at pivoting some of our resources into that space, particularly in the context of inspection as well, and really making sure that we're supporting our staff.
Thank you very much. May I just come back to the inspection, because I know from October the 7th, and it was really useful to read about it. Thank you very much. It's going to happen within 6 months. That's quite a long time span. Have you anything closer than that, or you just have to go through Christmas hoping it doesn't come? I know in children's services, they tell you on a Monday before midday that they're coming next week. Do you have that as well?
So I think I've outlined in the paper, it's still quite early days with the CQC inspection regime for adult social care, and they are really clear when they give you notification that it could be up to 6 months. So local authorities are waiting up to 6 months to have their on-site inspection. It has been fed back that that's not ideal in terms of I think how it makes people feel, to be quite honest with you. I think sort of the psychological impact on our staff, you know, underneath that sort of impending inspection. But I think for us, we will look to, put a plan in place to support staff during that period. I think the other thing that will happen is because of the national feedback around CQC, there will be further work around taking feedback from local authorities who are already engaged. I think even today I received notification of taking part in some feedback on the process so far, and they will be looking, I think, to evolve the process over coming months. So I don't think that timescale will change, but I do think they will evolve the process for us over coming months.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else have any comments? Rowena?
Just a general question. There's a lot in the news about the impact of the extra employers' national insurance on the care home sector. I think a lot of that will probably, well, it will impact on the council placements as well, the cost, but obviously it'll have an impact on funders as well. And I just wondered from a strategic point of view or a risk point of view, what you feel the impact of that will be and how perhaps you can mitigate.
So I think for us it is a major risk area, and I think the care sector have already been quite vocal around the challenge that brings to them. I think it is really challenging in Kingston because we have a really big care market that we support, and we don't get a huge amount of funding, so it has to be spread across a number of providers. I think for us, we know that it's been really challenging to offer uplifts across the board, and we've had to work really hard in terms of managing sustainability providers, managing our Care Act duty, but also making sure that's affordable. I do think we will have to think really carefully about how we can continue to support the market with the NI, but also the London Living Wage commitments that we have as well. So we are going to be looking at sort of scenario modelling what that could look like. I think we'll also be looking to lobby as well around that, and I think I've seen today that ADAS have already written back on that particular pressure as well, and so we'll look to continue to do that, but locally I know Sam and the team will be looking to do the modelling work in terms of the budget setting moving forward as well.
And also the energy impact, because, you know, care homes are obviously quite well heated, aren't they? So they're going to suffer quite a big hit from high energy prices too. So it's kind of quite a few sort of whammies coming down the line.
Yeah, I think so. We're looking at the moment to model out the scenarios, and it looks at both what is the impact next year of, so we don't know what the increase in the living wage will be, but we know the minimum wage is increasing by 6.7%, which will impact providers alongside the national insurance. And we're also looking at, we're modelling out what the impact of energy prices are, particularly on care homes, when that is a huge amount of the cost that have impacted them both now, but also over the last 3 years, and those costs sort of increase over time. So that's something we're reviewing at the moment.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Sorry, Anne, did you? No, sorry. Thank you, Susan.
Just a question about Connected Kingston. I continue to find the name of that website utterly baffling, and I suspect there may even be people in this room who don't really understand what it's for. I don't know if you monitor, like, how many people land on that page, you know, organically by just searching for the services, because I know it's meant to be support, kind of self-referral and research. I've just tried searching for some keywords and it doesn't come up in anything. And I just wonder, because I know we had the community connectors. I mean, there's so much jargon around social prescribing. None of it is resident friendly. Is it time to take another look and ask ourselves whether it's really doing the job it needs to do as an outward-facing resource, and is it clear to people what it is? You know, I even wonder, if you were to rename it Living Well in Kingston, would it actually make more sense to people than it does now? At the moment, it sounds like a digital or technology service.
I think that's really helpful, Councillor Skipworth, in terms of feedback around the name, and I think it does sound a bit digital because it is about a digital platform. But I think in terms of connecting Kingston's reach, I think for those who are in the know, it's quite well known and quite well used. And I think what we've been talking about with colleagues across the council is, well, how do we build this into something that really makes sense for more people across the borough? And how do we embed it across the whole of the council? Because it has been quite sort of specific to sort of the public health space. We have done some work, and I can't remember off the top of my head, and I'm really happy to share it, but we have done some work around looking at the number of views of the pages, but we've also done some research work as well on the impact of Connected Kingston, and there's been some really positive behavioural change as a result of some of the work that we do with the website and some of the social marketing that comes alongside the website. I think it's also important to remember that Connected Kingston isn't just about that platform, but it is part of our social prescribing offer, and we work alongside a number of our sort of voluntary sector partners to deliver that. I would say that the team who work on Connected Kingston are really passionate about wanting to develop it, and there's some really good examples of how we've built some of the content working with some of our partnership boards, and recently particularly working with the Autism and ADHD board. So I think there is opportunity at this point for us to really think about how do we develop it so it is something that makes sense to everybody, is accessible, but is something that is something that we feel that is mainstreamed really and easily accessible. So I think that's really helpful feedback, but I think the team are really receptive to sort of taking on board that feedback and developing it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Does anyone have anything else to add? No? So do we agree to note this unanimously? Yeah. Thank you very much. Let's move on to item 10, the winter fuel payment. Sorry, I can't read my own handwriting, so I'll have to do it just there. Removal mitigations, I'm really sorry. And this is for us to, for information, and I'm sure you've all had a good read of it, but I think, Sam, would you like to add anything to it? Not really, no. Thank you. Has anybody read it and have any questions that they would like? So I'm going to go for Sue and then Roger.
Thanks, Chair. And to say thank you, Sam, for producing this. It's really nice to see it all set out so well like this. And I know lots of older residents, including me, have been worried about this, and they've been wondering what their concrete options are. So to see it all set out like this, and I assume that you've been talking with Staywell and different people, Case-Hill, Kingston Association of Blind, and I see that, you know, there's been lots and lots of communications going on. I was particularly worried about the older people that are digitally excluded. So can you tell us a little bit about that? That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ansari. Yes, so in terms of, just to say, in terms of the work we are doing with voluntary sector groups, we already have quite an established process around how we work around the household support funds. So the team are really closely connected to a number of our voluntary sector partners, including Staywell, RBK, they'll work with Citizens Advice. So it's a really targeted approach around making sure that we understand who might benefit from the offer. And in terms of accessibility, we are going to have some printed leaflets that we're going to be working with our partners to make sure that we can get that out. And through the VCSE newsletters, we'll be putting some information out through there. So there'll be a number of different ways, and we'll just adapt that based on what the feedback that we get as well. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Roger.
Thank you, Chair. My question follows on from Susie's. What feedback have we had from our partners, both in the private sector and our NGO charity partners, in terms of dovetailing our approaches? So I think in part you've touched on that, but I'd like to know sort of specific, just give a couple of examples of where we are beneficially working together. What I'm thinking back to is the good work that we did with the workshop sessions that we held, and then the action that followed those with our partners a year or two back with the cost of living crisis. Thank you, Chair.
So I'll see if I can pick that up, Councillor Hayes. So I think we'll be attending a number of community events and groups to promote and support the offer, and then on the back of that, that will inform how we can then work with individual agencies around then really supporting individuals. I think outside of the sort of specific, the winter fuel element, that the Household Support Fund is open to a number of, it's open to, you know, all of our voluntary sector providers to, as long as they meet the criteria, they can make an application. So I think it's through that process that then we sort of work with them on any of the sort of implementation plans that they bring through. Just to say, I think it's important to know that in terms of the Household Support Fund, it is a fund that we do need to report on. So there's a bit of process around that in terms of how we work together. But I think some of it is quite locally led in terms of the organisations as well that we work with in terms of the specifics.
Thank you. And if I could just add to that a little bit, Roger, in the voluntary sector from my working life, through Kingston Voluntary Action, they have a grant that they're distributing to a lot of the voluntary sector organisations. It's £300, but it just goes a little way towards putting on tea and toast, bringing in your most vulnerable residents and having them in a space where they feel safe, and then doing some work around what more could they be helped with, what do they need. So there's that going on, which is sort of under the remit of the our social care team as well. Thank you. Anything else?
Could I just come back on that, because I think there is a wider role for the council, and it is to lobby government to help them see the error of their ways. I don't think they're very open to that, but that doesn't mean to say that we shouldn't at least embarrass them, if not get them to change their way, because this really is an utterly futile and pointless policy that can only lead to harm. Because if there were a full and proper take-up of the pension allowance that would take many of the vulnerable out of losing their winter fuel allowance, then the government would not only not make a saving, it would actually cost them more money. So I think there is a role for us just to say that out loud, if not actually to lobby the government to show how utterly pointless, foolish and harmful this policy is.
Thank you very much, Roger. Heard and understood. Sorry, Rowena.
It's not often, Roger, that I say I wholeheartedly agree with you, but I do. But I'd also say that to the VAT on school fees as well, but we might not agree on that, I don't know. But one thing that I read this week that I found quite disturbing was that apparently there's an increase in, and I don't know whether you know whether this is the case in Kingston, and there's been an increase in admissions of elderly people to hospital with burns from hot water bottles. It was in the national press, and I suppose it sort of comes from the winter fuel thing, because if you're not going to heat your house, you're going to have a hot water bottle, and maybe, you know, they're not very so that might be something that's worth looking out for, whether we see an increase of that happening locally.
Don't know about that specifically for Kingston, but just on that theme around sort of staying warm and well, I think, you know, this week we have been talking across the directorate about supporting people to stay well during winter, and many of our sort of public health campaigns are focused around making sure that families are aware of some of the risks around that obviously present themselves, particularly to some of our older adults who are really vulnerable at this time. So just to sort of provide assurance that those conversations are happening across our teams in terms of how we come together to make sure that messaging and support is available. And yeah, I think, you know, just today I was at Stay Well actually, and we were talking about the work of our proactive anticipatory care teams and how that multidisciplinary approach of teams being out there in the community provides a really good opportunity to get eyes on people in homes, and how that really then enables us to come together and minimise some of those risks. So not directly related, but I think there's obviously there's quite a bit of work going on around starting to sort of minimise some of those risks. And I think just one point sort of related, without getting political, to Councillor Hayes' point, I think there is an issue around with this funding. It's obviously short term, but I think, you know, we're really, you know, clear as a council that, you know, when we bring in short term funds, then we obviously need to understand the risks of providing that and then not being able to sort of sustain that support over the longer term. And I think it's really important that we're able to sort of continue to lobby and challenge around those continuing sort of pressures that we face at this time as well.
Thank you very much. Noel?
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm interested in the geography of this. Do we have an open line of communication to our neighbouring boroughs? And I'm not thinking just to those that are London facing, but also to those to the south and west of us in the hinterland of Surrey.
I'd have to check, Councillor Hadji-Michael, but certainly on in terms of informing our position around the additional support, we did look at other local boroughs who are providing similar support, but I'm happy to look.
If I may, I think that might be a fantastic opportunity for a louder, more united voice from what is an extended southwest corner of London going into the other parts of Surrey.
Can I just come back on that, because I think it's a very good point that Noel makes. And again, going back to our experience over the last couple of years with the cost of living crisis, certainly working with some of the big employers and neighbouring non-London boroughs was very useful in that. I'm thinking specifically of Chessington World of Adventures, because of where they are geographically located. A great deal of their staff are not borough residents, but they are Surrey residents in Surrey Heath, or sorry, not Surrey Heath, in Mole Valley or Epsom and Ewell or Elmbridge. And so working with those boroughs was certainly beneficial then, and I'm sure would be now too.
Thank you, Rowena.
Yeah, and I mean, collective voices are always stronger, and another way to lobby, I actually sit on the LGA board, the Wellbeing Board, which covers adult social care, and that, you know, combined with lots of different councils and people across the country is another way of having a direct lobbying to ministers and stuff like that. Obviously, it's a different setup to before. We don't have, I personally don't have quite that sort of key into government now, because obviously there's a change. But I mean, that's all you can do, isn't it? It's a campaigning and lobbying at all angles, and there will be implications. People are worried about heating their houses because it's become very expensive. I mean, and you don't want to have, other risks that they cause harm because they're not heating their houses in a safe way.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else have any comments to make? No. Thank you. So unanimously we note that we received this information. Thank you so much, Sam. And I'm sorry that we've left you down there on your own. We should have brought you into the body of the Kirk. I'm really sorry at leaving you down there. Thank you very, very much, everybody. Final item, urgent items. There are none for this evening, so no further business. And we close at 21:07. And thank you all very, very much. Thank you.